She stepped off the bullet train at Tokyo Station and immediately felt something that contradicted everything she thought she knew about modern Japan. Patricia Poleo, the Venezuelan journalist who had spent years deconstructing economic narratives across Latin America, had come to Tokyo to investigate Asia's power dynamics. The Western narrative was clear. Japan was yesterday's power, eclipsed by China's rise and struggling with demographic decline, a fading giant clinging to past glories. But as she walked through the gleaming corridors of one of the world's most efficient transportation hubs, surrounded by the quiet hum of precision engineering, she realized the West had fundamentally misunderstood what they were witnessing. Japan hadn't declined. It had evolved. It had become something more powerful and more subtle than traditional hegemony. It had become invisible. Contrary to popular belief, Japan's greatest victory was not its post-war economic miracle. It was convincing the world that its influence had ended. The illusion of decline. The statistics seemed to support the decline narrative. Japan's GDP had stagnated for decades. Its population was shrinking. Its young people were said to lack ambition. China had overtaken it as the world's second-largest economy. South Korea had surged ahead in consumer electronics and cultural influence. The story of modern Asia appeared to be written without Japan. But Patricia Poleo understood that in the 21st century, power isn't measured by the size of your economy. It's measured by how indispensable you are to everyone else's economy. And by this metric, Japan hadn't declined. It had achieved something unprecedented: technological omnipresence without political visibility. The evidence was hidden in plain sight, embedded in the devices and systems that defined modern life. Every smartphone contained Japanese components. Every semiconductor fabrication plant relied on a Japanese precision machinery. Every electric vehicle battery depended on Japanese materials science. Every advanced manufacturing process used Japanese robotics and automation. Japan had become the invisible foundation of the global technology ecosystem. Remove Japan, and the modern world would cease to function. Yet somehow, this fundamental dependency remained almost entirely invisible to global consciousness. The component empire. Patricia Poleo's first revelation came during a visit to a Samsung facility in South Korea. Samsung, the crown jewel of South Korean technology and a symbol of the country's remarkable development, was indeed impressive. But as she examined the supply chain documentation, she discovered something remarkable. Nearly 30% of Samsung's critical components came from Japan. The camera sensors in Samsung phones were made by Sony. The precision glass was manufactured by AGC, formerly Asahi Glass. The advanced materials for semiconductors came from companies like Shin-Etsu Chemical and JSR Corporation. Even the manufacturing equipment used to produce Samsung's chips was largely Japanese, made by Tokyo Electron, Nikon, and Canon. This wasn't just true for Samsung. It was true across the entire Asian technology sector. TSMC, the Taiwanese semiconductor giant that produces chips for Apple and Nvidia, relied heavily on Japanese equipment and materials. Chinese smartphone manufacturers like Huawei and Xiaomi depended on Japanese components for their most advanced features. Even American tech companies, when they wanted the highest quality components, often ended up sourcing from Japan. The pattern was consistent. Asian countries had built impressive final assembly capabilities, but the most critical, highest value, most technologically advanced components still came from Japan. It was as if Japan had deliberately chosen to occupy the most strategic position in the global supply chain, invisible to consumers, but absolutely essential to manufacturers. The materials revolution, the depth of Japanese technological dominance became clear when Patricia Polio investigated the materials science sector. This was perhaps the most boring-sounding, but most crucial industry in the modern economy. Advanced materials don't make headlines, but they make everything else possible. Consider lithium-ion batteries, the technology that powers everything from smartphones to electric vehicles. The world's attention focuses on Tesla and BYD, on battery factories in Nevada and Guangzhou. But the most critical components, the separators, the electrolytes, the advanced cathode materials, are dominated by Japanese companies like Asahi Kasei, Sumitomo Chemical, and Panasonic. Or consider semiconductors, the foundation of the digital economy. While the world debates American versus Chinese chip capabilities, Japanese companies quietly control the specialized chemicals, gases, and materials without which no semiconductor can be manufactured. Companies like JSR, Tokyo Okakogyo, and Stella Chemifa don't make headlines, but they make chips possible. This strategy was deliberate. While other countries competed in visible, consumer-facing industries, Japan focused on becoming indispensable in invisible B2B sectors. They chose to control the inputs rather than fight over the outputs. The precision machinery monopoly. Japanese invisible dominance is most complete in precision machinery and manufacturing equipment, the machines that make everything else. Patricia Polio visited a Nikon facility making lithography equipment for semiconductor manufacturers. These machines, costing tens of millions each, use extreme ultraviolet light to etch circuits with nanometer precision. Without these machines, advanced semiconductors cannot exist. Japanese companies like Nikon and Canon compete primarily with Dutch ASML, while Chinese and Korean companies remain years behind. The same pattern repeated across industries. Robot manufacturers like Fanuc dominated factory automation worldwide. Precision measuring instruments from Mi to Toyo set global standards. Machine tools from Mazak enabled precision manufacturing from Detroit to Shenzhen. This wasn't accidental. In the 1980s, facing intense trade friction, Japanese companies pivoted from consumer markets to becoming indispensable suppliers to everyone else's consumer ambitions. The software shadow. While the world debated American software platforms and Chinese super apps, Patricia Polio discovered Japan had achieved embedded software dominance. Japanese companies didn't create social media platforms that captured headlines. Instead, they created underlying systems that made digital transformation possible. Nintendo pioneered handheld gaming, motion controls, and hybrid console design. Sony created the Blu-ray standard, developed audio codecs, and built image sensors enabling smartphone cameras. Japanese companies dominated industrial software and automation systems, the unglamorous but crucial world of digitized supply chains and factory floors. The cultural soft power deception. The world measured soft power through Hollywood movies and K-pop. By this metric, Japan seemed surpassed by South Korean cultural exports, but Patricia Polio realized this visible cultural competition obscured deeper Japanese cultural victory. Japanese concepts had become so integrated into global business culture, they were no longer recognized as Japanese. Lean manufacturing, just-in-time production, continuous improvement, Kaizen. These weren't just management techniques, They were the foundation of modern industrial organization worldwide. Every major manufacturer, from Tesla to Foxconn, organized itself according to principles developed by Toyota. Meanwhile, Japanese design principles had quietly conquered global aesthetics. The minimalism celebrated by Apple, the functionality of Scandinavian design, all drew heavily from Japanese concepts refined over centuries. The demographic advantage. Western analysis of Japan's demographic decline missed a crucial insight. Labor shortages drove automation innovation. Aging societies created demand for health technology. Smaller, domestic markets forced global thinking. Japanese companies turned demographic challenges into competitive advantages. Countries with growing populations could afford inefficiency. Japan couldn't. This constraint forced innovation and optimization that became exportable, competitive advantage. Japanese efficiency wasn't just about culture. It was about necessity transformed into expertise. The quiet conquest. Japan had achieved something historically unprecedented: hegemony through indispensability. Traditional empires conquered territory. Modern powers competed for market share. But Japan became the invisible infrastructure of everyone else's ambitions. Remove Japanese technology, materials, and manufacturing expertise, and the modern Asian economy would collapse. Yet because this dependence operated at the component level, it remained largely invisible to political attention. This was the ultimate strategic victory: to be essential without being threatening, to be everywhere without being noticed, to shape the world without claiming credit. Japan learned that in the interconnected global economy, the most powerful position isn't at the top of the pyramid, it's at the center of the network. The West looked for Japan's decline, while Japan quietly engineered everyone else's rise. The real question wasn't whether Japan had lost its position as Asia's dominant power. The real question was whether anyone else could function without it. Contrary to popular belief, Japan's invisible empire represents the future of global influence, not domination through force, but indispensability through innovation.